Hi everyone, in this video we're going to be taking a look at functional skills. This is going to be specifically useful for anyone that is studying ESOL English, Functional Skills Level 1, Functional Skills Level 2, or anyone that just needs to brush up on their spelling, grammar and their punctuation. So specifically this video is going to be one of our skills boost lessons, and it's using punctuation and paragraphs correctly. Now, if you haven't done so already, please could you like and subscribe. It really does help us out when you do so, and it does kind of give us a bit of an indication of the kind of videos that are helpful, and it can help us steer this channel in the right direction. Within this video then, we're going to be able to recall the basic forms of punctuation, understand how to punctuate and paragraph a passage correctly, and apply your understanding to write your own speech. So specifically, if we're thinking about an assessment focus, we're really going to be thinking about boosting our writing skills for the assessments. Look at the different forms of punctuation, and what I'd like you to do is then match them to the correct definitions. So as you can see there, we have a full stop, exclamation mark and a question mark. Now these are what I would refer to as our fundamental forms of punctuation. So you need to try and think about which definitions you can match them up to, and then if you can, try and stretch and challenge yourself and think what symbol represents each form of punctuation. So see if you can actually think of what does the punctuation actually look like when you put it on the page. So we have, for the definitions, this is used to end a sentence. When you end a sentence with one of the 5 W's, this is usually used to show strong feeling or add emphasis. Now if you'd like a bit more time, please feel free to pause the video here, but what we're going to do is we're going to jump ahead and we're going to look at the definitions correctly matched up in the next part of the video. Class feedback. Check your answers against the ones below. So here we have our punctuation then on our left hand side, and we have our definitions right in the middle. So for a full stop, this is used to end a sentence, and a good indication for this one is you generally will give a full stop when you need to take a breath or a pause in your writing. A question mark, so when you end a sentence with one of the 5 W's. Exclamation mark, so this is usually used to add strong feelings or to show a bit of extra emphasis to your writing, so a bit more feeling and a bit more emotion as well. So in terms of the symbols then, this is what each of them would look like when we actually put it on a page. So a full stop, nice and simple, it's just a little dot on the page. A question mark, and then the exclamation mark. Now we did just mention as well for the question mark that you use this whenever you end a sentence with one of the 5 W's. If you're unsure about what we mean by the 5 W's, do check out our video which goes into these in more detail, because it is on our channel as well. The 5 W's is essentially what, who, when, where and how. So whenever you say one of these words, generally it means that the sentence needs to end in a question or question mark, because that is the kind of thing that you're stating to your audience. You'll be asking a question if you're using one of those key words. Look at the example below and identify where the missing punctuation needs to go. So those 3 main forms of punctuation that we just went through are all going to be missing from this passage. We need to think which ones need to go there to actually help it to make sense. So it says there, I was so happy when we got engaged and couldn't wait to start planning the wedding for our special day. I wanted everything. After all, you only get married once, right? It is supposed to be the biggest day of your life, so why not go a little crazy? Now you can probably tell by the way that I read that is that there's some natural parts in that where you would automatically have a bit of a pause or a breather. Now that's a really good thing to think about, especially when we're trying to consider where are we going to get our full stops in there, where are we going to get our question marks, and where might you need an exclamation mark as well to add a little bit more feeling or emphasis. If you'd like to pause the video now and go through it at your own pace, please feel free to do so. We're now going to jump ahead and we're going to have a look at the teacher's feedback to see where this needs to have the punctuation. Class feedback. Check your answers against the ones below. So here we have the same passage that we just went through, and now we're going to see how it sounds now that we've actually used our punctuation. You'll notice as well that what we've done is we've started to include commas in here as well, and this just helps to actually indicate where we need to take slightly smaller pauses just to make the reading flow a little bit better. If you're not too sure what we mean when we talk about using commas, we're going to look into that in a bit more in the next video as well. So it says, I'm so happy when we got engaged and couldn't wait to start planning the wedding. For our special day, I wanted everything. After all, you only get married once, right? It is supposed to be the biggest day of your life, so why not go a little crazy? So you can see there from the way that I've read it that there's going to be a few more pauses, and it's going to help us to understand the actual meaning of the passage a bit better. So the first thing is, in that first sentence we're having a full stop after the word wedding, because that is where we'd naturally pause because it's the end of the thought or the idea. And again, for our special day, I wanted everything. After all, we have a slight pause there. You only get married once, right? So again, we've got a slight pause after once, and then we've got a rhetorical question after right. It's supposed to be the biggest day of your life. That's one idea. Give us a slight pause so that we're not completely running out of breath in this sentence. So why not go a little crazy? And we're using a question mark as well. Another thing to remember is that when you are using things like a full stop or a question mark, make sure that you follow this by using a capital letter with the next word that you're writing. So it works very similar to a full stop in that whenever you're doing a full stop, you'll need to have a capital letter following it as well. Using paragraphs effectively. Look at the acronym below. What do you think the letters might stand for? So this is something that we use to help learners understand how to actually paragraph their work. This can be quite a difficult thing to go through. So the acronym that we use generally is called TIP-TOP. Now, when you break this down, we separate the words a little bit, and the first thing that we're going to think about is these first two letters, the T and the I. And the reason why I've separated those is because the TI in TIP is going to refer to time. So any time that it actually changes time within your writing, you need to change paragraphs. So that will be a key indication to either leave a line or a little indent to indicate a new paragraph. The next one, the P, is place. So let's say if you were telling us about places you've been in terms of holidays, or you're writing a review, if you go to a different location, a different town, a different city, anything like that, you'd need to change your paragraph as well. The next one, the TO, is topic. So for example, if we take the main topic that we're looking at within today's video, and it is the idea of weddings or something along those lines, then if you talk about, let's say, the food, and then you're going to talk about the venue, you'd need to have a different paragraph for that, because although we're talking about the same theme, the topic has changed ever so slightly within our writing. And the next one is person. So if you're talking about a different person or a different point of view, then you'll need to have a new paragraph. This is particularly important as well if you go and have a go at creative writing, which will be extremely important should you go on and continue to study English right up until GCSE. Look at the exam question and attempt the challenges that follow. So what we're going to do now, we're going to use all the things that we've thought about so far, and we're going to try and apply it to our exam response. So this is a typical kind of writing task that you'll be facing within functional skills. What you'll get first is you'll get essentially a scenario and something just to tell you about the kind of situation that they want you to write about. So it says then, you've been asked to write a speech at a wedding fair to advise people about the benefits and challenges with getting married. So you're writing a speech, but at the same time this is something that is meant to be performed and read out. In your response you could discuss why you think marriage is or is not important. Talk about the different types of wedding available, so for example a big one or a small one, and any other factors you think is relevant to the topic. Now this can be quite difficult, especially if you haven't thought about this kind of thing yourself. If you're struggling with this one, do check out our video that looks into this kind of topic in a bit more detail. So we're also going to be doing a reading lesson on this based on the whole theme of marriage and things like that. So if you're unsure about what the kind of things to write about, wait for that video. It should be coming on next week, and you can use any ideas there to actually help plan and write your own response. So the first thing you need to look at whenever you're faced with a writing task is try and identify the topic, the audience, and the purpose of the question. Now if you've watched any of our other videos and you've had a go at some of the writing tasks in them, you might be familiar with the acronym TAP. so TAP, and that's the topic, the audience, and the purpose. So those are going to be the main factors that affect our writing. So if we think about the topic, first of all, the main topic here is about the benefits and the challenges with getting married. So we need to make sure that we're aware that that is the main thing that we're going to be writing about. The audience, now this isn't very clear, but if it's at a wedding fair, people who generally go to a wedding fair are people who are newly engaged or planning eventually to go and get married, or they're a family member or a friend of someone that will get married. So you've got to think about the kind of things they care about, their concerns, their worries, things like that, things that really kind of understand the needs and the wants of the audience we're directing our writing to. And the last one would be the purpose. So why are we writing? So the main purpose here is to advise. So we're telling them what we think. So you need to decide, do you think marriage is important? Do you think it's best to have a big wedding or a small wedding? And is there anything else you can work into the question there? Try and think about actually vocalizing your own point of view. And we're not going to be overly aggressive with it. You're just there to give some advice. So a nice gentle tone is needed to respond to this question. The next thing to think about is to plan 3 paragraphs with a clear focus in each one. Now, the actual writing task has already given us 3 bullet points to help us focus our ideas on, so you're more than welcome to use some of those to help plan your response. And the final one, the mega challenge, look at the example response on the next slide and you can use it as a starting point for your own writing. Look at the student example. What makes it successful and how might it be improved? So this is an actual response that was written by a previous learner. So we're going to look through it and we're going to think about what kind of things work well. Think about all the other things that we went through within this video. Those are the main things we need to be focused on and making sure we're embedding those kind of skills within our response. So it says then, good afternoon. As I look around at all the enthusiastic, excited faces before me, I feel blessed and privileged to be speaking to you all today. Getting married can be fun, wonderful and life-changing. However, do we spend too much money on just a single day? Or is all the expense, stress and worry worth it for that one glorious day? Firstly, I believe you should have the wedding you dream of. No one can tell you that you don't deserve it. However, 90% of people feel deflated after their big day. After weeks, months and often years of planning, many people feel disappointed once the wedding day is over. Getting married is important, yes, but do we really need to go through so much stress, anxiety, and financial strain to get there? If you'd like to pause the video now and go through at your own leisure, please feel free to do so. There's quite a few things to unpack here. One key thing to think about as well is, have they used the correct kind of punctuation? Does it flow and does it sound like a kind of natural conversation that we'd be looking for if we were to write a speech? Class feedback. Check your answers against the teacher's comments. So here we have our response that we just looked at on the left hand side, and on the right hand side we're going to have the feedback given by a teacher once it's been able to have a look at it and really try and assess the quality of the response by the learner. So here's the teacher's comments then. So first of all we're going to think about what went well. So it says the response has been written in the correct form for a speech. Now if you think about, how do we know that? How do you actually know what a speech looks like and what it sounds like? And the first thing I would say is that it's addressing the actual audience. So it's saying good afternoon. You don't have to do this in your own response. Obviously you could say good morning, good evening. It really doesn't really matter about the time of day, but it's important to make sure you're actually addressing the audience. You're not just jumping into what you're trying to say. So that's first of all a good thing to be starting off with in this response. Next one, the response has been punctuated effectively. So again, if we look at it, we've got a number of different commas, we've got full stops, and we've also got question marks. What we're missing from this is obviously an exclamation mark, which is one that we've been thinking about today. So it might be important that you think about how can you use that to maybe show an extra emphasis or some enthusiasm within the writing. A range of DeForest techniques have been used appropriately. Now if you're not too sure what we mean when we refer to our DeForest techniques, then please do check out one of our other videos. We do go into it a lot in a lot of our other videos, so I won't keep repeating myself over and over again. But essentially these are the key techniques that we need to be using, not just in our writing assessment, but also when we do our reading one as well. We might be asked to identify a few of those key techniques within that assignment or assessment, I should say. So if we have a look at it there, we've got a wonderful group of 3 being used straight off the bat, and you can see it here. So I feel, we say that I feel blessed and privileged. Okay, so that's very positive language. Getting married can be fun, wonderful, and life-changing would be a group of 3. We also have our rhetorical questions as well. However, do we spend too much on just a single day? There's a rhetorical question. We've got another rhetorical question. Is it worth it for that one glorious day? And we also have a group of 3 towards the end there as well. Do we really need to go through so much stress, anxiety, and financial strain to get there? So again, you've got quite a few techniques being used in there. And when we think about it, this isn't really a complete response yet, but already we can start to see that they've used quite a few techniques to make it sound effective. EBI, so how can this be improved? Even better if. The response has not been written in paragraphs. So it doesn't matter if you write the most engaging text in the world. If you are not actually breaking this down into paragraphs, then you're not going to get a very high mark. Okay, you have to think carefully about how it's being structured. So what I would do personally is I would separate this into at least 2 paragraphs, and where I'd separate it is where we've got that rhetorical question, is it worth it for that one glorious day? And the reason why I would is because this sounds like quite an interesting introduction, and we have this word firstly here, which would also suggest that he's moving on to make a different point. So arguably he's making his first main point and moving away from the introduction. So now we need to make sure that we're actually breaking it up into paragraphs and letting the examiner know that we're done with our introduction, and now we're first of all going to start on our main paragraph, or our first paragraph after the introduction. The next one. The response needs to include 3 paragraphs with a clear focus or topic and include an appropriate sign-off for a speech. So this is not a complete speech. We would want at least 3 strong paragraphs, so you need to be thinking very quickly about the kind of ideas that you could come up with and generate for your response. And you need to make sure that at the end of the speech you do things like thank the audience, thank them for the time, and let them know your final thoughts and messages on the topic. If you need any additional support or help, then new videos will be added onto our channel every single week. Alternatively, you can check out our partner channel, Bookworm Teaching, for more lessons and all things English. If you've stayed with us this far, guys, thank you very much. And if you haven't done so already, please could you like and subscribe. It really does help us out when you do so. Thanks ever so much for listening, guys, and all the best with your work and revision in the future. Bye bye.